All right, we got Becky here on Fucking Real. Welcome, Becky.
Thanks for having me.
Oh, mate, it's been it's been a while.
It has. It's been at long last. We made it.
Yeah. I think did you reach out to me or did I reach out to you right at the early stages? And I think I was going to come on your podcast.
It was actually Danny who put me in contact with you and said, he was like, I've got this fucking legend who's starting a podcast. It's called Fucking Real. And I was like, fucking real? Like a pod? I was like, yep, he sounds like my man.
Yeah.
And Danny's a legend as well. So I was like, yep, super keen. So reached out to you, was going to have you on my podcast. And then I'm pretty sure like a year later, here we are.
Yeah, I know. And it's been a bit of a journey since then as well for me.
Yeah.
I mean, that was right in some of the early starts
of
setting up this podcast.
I don't think you'd actually maybe even recorded yet.
Okay.
So maybe it was a little bit over like a year and a half. How long have you been going for?
Yeah, just over a year.
Yeah, so I don't think you've done it yet.
Yeah. Oh, well, here we are.
Yeah.
Wicked.
Yes.
What are we going to talk about, Becky? Well, I don't know. You done your book launch yesterday.
Yes.
And I saw all the Instagram posts, man. I'm spewing I missed out on that.
It was really good. Like we definitely created FOMO and it was really interesting because obviously the job that I have normally is where I go up on site, which is male dominated, and you're sitting in front of dudes at 5 a.m. who are like, oh, what the fuck is this got to say kind of thing. Whereas like last night, speaking to a crowd full of women who are there like, yes, like, just acknowledging you and then coming up and being like, oh my God, you've done a book. And then like the other authors and stuff. So it was really nice. It's been a long time in the making. So it was nice last night for it actually to happen. So yeah.
Did you behave?
I don't drink, so like behaving is like. Well, I mean, yeah. I was
and then you get tired. Yeah.
Well, I was on site Monday to Wednesday. I landed yesterday at 10:30. I was like, I had a wonderful woman who did my hair and makeup so that I could actually sit and chill out. Who did some videos and stuff like that, and we just had an epic chat beforehand, and then was able to MC. And I was like, okay, I'm ready to go to bed at like 11 o'clock. And then I was sitting there, how you just on a high, and I'm like, I don't want to go to bed. I don't want it to end. Yeah. So, we behaved. I think as well for a lot of people, it was like midweek, and there were like a few mums and stuff there. And Em, who'd organised it, had in true parent style had a sick kid that she had to drag around with her that whole day and stuff. So it was like nice for it to happen, and then also nice to be on the other side. So I behaved as in, I didn't go out drinking and get loose because I don't drink anymore. Yeah. But I was like, we were talking about it before. I was like, let's get lit. Let's go out dancing. I'm ready to go.
Yeah, it's a bit of a fine line, isn't it? Because even with the gala coming up, and we'll give the gala a bit of a plug actually.
Yeah,
because
absolutely.
You're talking at the Empowered gala that's raising money for the Starting Line, the charity.
Yeah.
Fuck man, what an absolute honour to have you on there. And for those who want to come and see Becky and talk, and a whole lot of other guest speakers, including myself.
Yeah, I was going to say.
It's on the 9th of November, and we're encouraging everyone to get down there. It's a wellness gala, suit and tie event at the Camfield.
Yeah.
We'll put the links in this podcast. Yeah, in the links below. But between the book, I know you're a mental health ambassador. You do talks all over Australia. We haven't I know we've caught up and spoke a lot, but I haven't gone into depth with you about what you actually do, what you represent, and also how you got there. And try and stop her. Like, hey, I even want to know more about this book of yours and the other girls, and what does it mean? What's it about?
What it's all about.
Yeah.
Well, it's lots of things that we've touched on there, and it is really interesting. I feel like with your friends and stuff, you never truly actually know what the fuck anybody actually does. You know what I mean? Unless you have an in-depth question, because I feel like whenever we're catching up, it's
always lies anyway.
Yeah. I'm doing so good. Everything's fantastic. When actually it's like I was talking about it yesterday. You know how the ducks swimming, and you're just gliding over the top of the water. That's what everybody's seeing. Yeah. When actually it's like, oh, holy fuck. But going back to the gala. Really honoured actually to be a part of it. I think something that stands out for the gala for me is that it is something that you guys are putting on, and it's like for the people. You know what I mean? I think a lot of the time with the galas that you go to, it can be really corporate. And while there's going to be corporate people who go there, I'm brought up going to protests. I've been brought up, speaking with and speaking to the people and doing everything for, unity of the people. And I think I'm most excited about speaking at the gala for that reason, because you boys, you talk the talk and walk the walk, and a lot of the time, people are trying their best, but I fucking love that you all are real and you're in it, you've been in it, you're doing the work, and so I'm really honoured to be a part of it. So I'm really excited for that, and I know that as well, when you get given like, oh, you can speak about whatever you like, you're like, sweet, this is going to be amazing. No holds barred.
We actually lost a speaker because we said, well, there's going to be fucking real conversations at this gala.
Yeah.
Well, first of all, thank you for saying that, because it's, I mean, you give me goosebumps even talking about it, because it's our first time running a gala and we're 100% in the trenches.
No doubt.
Events. Battling with this. Exactly. And we've also got the 25-hour fundraising event that you're also going to be a part of next weekend, which is going to be great. But, I think, and it's all credit. I can't take all full credit for that, but just the community that we've got, and it's just authentic, and I think that's the only way to really approach mental health, because you can't hide from it, and the fucking more you hide, the more you fake. Like, you just got to be real about it. You got to own it, and I think we just wanted to resemble that on the actual night. But then by just being authentic about it all, like we've sort of drawn those sort of people to come and talk at the event, to be a part of the event. We're not short of people that want to support it, get behind it. So although it's hard and it's mentally challenging, and Graydon and I haven't had any sleep for the last 2 weeks.
Well, Graydon's a new dad too,
and
you've got you're a business owner, like
we're all going, but it is for the people, man.
Yeah,
it's for the greater.
Yeah, and it's within integrity. The book, 4 Agreements. Of
Good
being
book.
impeccable with your word, and always doing your best. I find that's like one of the books that one of my favorite books to read, and like constantly going back to those 4 agreements. And I'm always looking for people who are in alignment with that.
Yeah.
So it's definitely hard to stay within integrity sometimes, but showing up how you guys do, and events are fucked, you know what I mean, because you're not doing it for clout. You're not usually you're doing it because it's something missing within the community that you are a part of. And a lot of the time people will allow you to do that. They want to do it, but they don't have time or space, and you guys don't have time or space, but you're doing it. And I love the community that you guys have around you, so I just try to weasel my way in there as much as I can.
I know you're definitely 100. You're there right at the front. And also just having a woman up there as well, because, I mean, this podcast and the starting line, I guess, is sort of would naturally just gravitated towards men's mental health a lot. Not that we've intentionally wanted that way. So, it's cool to have strong women at the front line like yourself.
Yeah, and I appreciate that.
Yeah.
I appreciate that because I agree. And I suppose where I've grown since I met you has been, I was very, so I've always been, women's empowerment, and because that was my journey on where I needed to go. Becky kind of like 5 years ago would be like, what the fuck, you're speaking, you have your own podcast, you're speaking on podcast, and you're grounded.
The source, by the way.
The resource. Yeah.
The resource.
Sorry. Yeah, we'll get you on. This, I love it because it's the source, the resource. And where I suppose I've grown and changed is like my audience was really female, and I really spoke into that because it was my experience. I've never been in a man's body. I haven't had a male experience. I've only had my own experience. And where I've grown and changed through, going on Aya journeys, going on different journeys, and doing that kind of self-discovery and the work around finding, yourself, not that you ever really do, you're always on that journey, is that, when I was speaking to it, I was speaking from a place of like being really righteous. I think the biggest thing that I learned was I was, going up, I would talk about respectful behaviours coming from the podcast. I used to do women's empowerment events. I started a podcast talking about it in line with the 5-4 inquiry into sexual harassment. I had experienced sexual assault as a teenager, sexual assault and sexual harassment in the workplace. And I was like, these men need to be told how to act. And that's where it came from. How do you reckon that goes down? Not very well.
Yeah, well, and I mean, it's only really starting to move, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
with the awareness around it. Even like domestic violence and things
totally.
like that. Yeah.
But the thing that I've learned is I was growing up, this was me. Like a year ago, this was me. People need to be told how to act. And just truly acknowledging, I suppose, going up into the male-dominated industry, it was really intimidating. Like we were talking about, going up and being in a room of like 70 to 100, predominantly men, looking back at you, and the perception I had of what they felt about me because I was taking things personally, because I was bringing things that had happened into the now, because I was treating all the people that I was speaking to as though they had done things to me. What are they? It's Jules who says that, you've got to heal the things that hurt you, otherwise you'll bleed on the people that didn't cut you.
Fuck, I like that.
Yeah, it's an epic saying. I don't know if I nailed it, but
I get what you mean though.
Yeah.
Like, and I want to know. So, how do we hold that thought, but just take a step backwards on how you got there?
Yeah.
Because I want to know what you're doing, and I want to hear like that change, because I see it all the time, like where we're trying to preach something so much rather than
be
it. Yeah.
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 How I got there was. So you would know this. It was showing up as well. It was showing up and like going on the journey myself and being willing to grow myself and also utilize my voice. So something that I became really fearful of was speaking up. I'd spoken up my whole life. When you say how did you get there, it's like, fuck, life has been so big.
It's a big question, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a huge question. But I suppose my upbringing, who I am and what, got me really passionate about it. My family, we grew up in northern England, Burnley. So I'm a Burnley lass, and my family talks like that. And my name's Becky.
Oh, you obviously come over, yeah.
Whenever I'm around family, Becky. I know I'm Becky.
Yeah.
Becky, or like to the Kiwis, it'd be like Bicky May. Oh, true, bro, Becky. Came over here when I was 5, and so my parents moved over here. Mum hadn't really travelled before, and Dad came over, went into like working all the time, and then they separated because I think, just being away from friends and family. Mum moved down to Nannup, built a teepee, broke up with Dad, and built a teepee. So I grew up in Nannup. Don't know if you guys are familiar with Nannup, little hippie town.
Yeah.
But she was
I
always...
went to the Nannup festival. Actually, took summer.
Okay.
When we were young, well, she was heaps young. She probably can't remember, but yeah, we went down there.
It's the best.
It's a beautiful town.
So good, because down there as well is like, it's like little Byron Bay, or where it's an alternative little universe down there. I feel like Fremantle is stepping into that a little bit as well, and there's little kind of what's it called? Not silos, but little other communities around Perth as well that are stepping into it. But Nannup was where we used to go to these things called the Rainbow Gathering. And, Mum always grew up alternative, and Dad being willing to have those conversations. But these gatherings were like, you'd go to protests, there'd be people strapped to trees and stuff like that. And whenever there was things going on politically, would be there. But there was also like a lot of nudity around. There was a lot of like, mud baths and chai teas and stuff. And as a kid, we'd do circus skills. So it was like really alternative. And as a kid, you only know your experience that you're having. So you think everybody's doing this, right? You didn't think it was weird. But because of that, around my body image and how I felt about myself, it was a blessing to grow up in that. But also what comes with two parents who separate from moving away is a lot of mental illness in the family. So Mum had, has struggled with psychosis previously, and pretty hectic, like going through potentially menopause. It's undiagnosed, but it's now understanding mental health and mental illness. It's like you can see what it is. And then Dad was also diagnosed with manic depression, bipolar. And so what it looked like in the house, quite real, is that when it was good, awesome. Like the alternative things that we got to do, going to these like hippie gatherings and everything like that, when their mental health was good, it was great. If there wasn't financial struggle, we were all good. But when it was hard, it was fucking challenging, and they would break consistently. But as a kid, you kind of don't know what's going on, right? And I remember, there'd be pots and pans being smashed, TV getting thrown out the windows when it was challenging because mum didn't kind of know how to handle it. How I perceived that when it was happening, I was like, what is this? Is it unhinged? But learning about other people's upbringing, I celebrate her and I have so much compassion for her because when she struggled, she smashed pots and pans. And her hectic upbringing, she never, although it was like a lot of mental stuff with us, we got smacked here and there, but she held it. She had to hold it together, and so did Dad. And so they were never violent with us or anything like that. So although they had all that fuckery going on for themselves, our upbringing, for the most part before that, they were trying to hold it together until they didn't. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Man, I relate to so many parts of that story, It's crazy how it's called generational trauma as well, isn't it?
Yeah.
I look back a lot of my mum and my mum sort of took her own life at the age of 14 and stuff. And, you just look back and reflect on it. It's obviously sad in a lot of areas, but then you also take on what did they go through? Where were they at? You know? And as a kid, you're not really understanding that part of it.
No.
But,
it's parenting, and now I haven't been a parent. I haven't been lucky enough yet to have successful ones or meet someone. But as a parent and watching my friends go through it, I get it. I get why you struggle. It's hard because you try your best. I don't know, to bring them up as best you possibly can and not put any of that shit that's happened onto them. But also,
by the way, my videographer couldn't make it here today. Sorry to interrupt.
No, I think this is a good time to just introduce us. Yeah.
And I've had to reach out to my daughter who just finished school summer, and she's running the cameras at the moment and hearing this, because I can also I got to watch how much I say here, but she's we've gone through a split up with her and me, and so I don't want to bring that into this topic, but it's hard raising a family, man, especially when you come from particular things and things do get toxic at times, and the kids are subject to that. But I don't know, what is the message out there for that? I mean, because I mean, I don't know, is there a perfect family?
No, not at all. No, not at all. And I think as well, there's so much more social media. I feel like there's a huge tactic in the divide of the human race often, whether it's gender, whether it's race, whether, we're so much more aware of the things that are happening around the world. Before, you never knew what Tom or Susan were doing down the road. So you could desire someone, that's on the same street and be like, oh, stuff like that. Whereas now we're aware of all these things that are around the world and these people that are around the world. You compare your relationship, you compare yourself to everybody else. Whereas before, people got on with it. And also, it wasn't perfect back then either. There were relationships where there was a lot of violence, a lot of sexual violence that were happening for our parents, and that was just the norm. You stayed regardless of that stuff. Whereas now, in the empowerment of women and the empowerment of men and the disempowerment of women and the disempowerment of men, it's challenging to be in a relationship. It's challenging to be a freaking human being every day. And then trying to bring up a human. I actually think that, teenagers, and is it Gen Z? Are you guys Gen Z? There's so much more pressure because we weren't aware of what was going on around the world. You know what I mean? And I know as a human being, with everything that's happening in Palestine, with things that are happening around the world, myself as somebody who is an activist or an advocate for things that are, injustice in the world, I'm like, I've got to do something. We've got to go, we've got to put, food on their table. We've got to fight for them. We've got to, bring justice to things that are happening with that. As an adult, I know how to navigate when I need to pull back from that and not go down the rabbit hole. As teenagers and, kids, they're aware of that stuff that's happening around the world. And I feel like sometimes they don't get to be kids.
Yeah, well, if we're talking about my daughter again, there's that whole, when she was younger and we had a lot of money back then, and she was one of the first kids to have an iPad, would go to cafes and people would be buzzing out because she's got this iPad. There's this little 2-year-old, 3-year-old kid just walking through it, just happily scrolling through it and open up pictures and, and you know, as a father, I can remember always being very sort of what's the word?
Vigilant
well, vigilant, but also just like always telling her, get off your phone,
Yeah.
you know, because my generation like is just too much electronics for them. But if I look back at it, like part of my mental health journey, a lot of what I have learned is through Audible, is through YouTube.
Oh, totally.
You know,
Yeah.
and they've got so many resources there. Well, for all of us.
Amen to that.
You know,
Yeah.
So like
because that's why I started the podcast too. I always felt like really stupid in high school because education wasn't necessarily for me, but I knew I was smart. My brain was going 10 to a dozen all the time, but I couldn't intake information. So same as why I started the podcast is that I needed an audio book. As soon as audio book became into my realm and podcasts, the world opened up.
Yeah.
So yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
With
it's
this
just
comes
that balance. It's like anything,
Totally.
isn't it? It's just that balance in between. But I just want to go back to the relationship thing, like the modern day relationship. And, you know, because it's a tough one. Yes, you should get out of a toxic relationship. But I feel like a lot of people just bail out. And I feel like relationships get together and expect that person to either fill their cup or vice versa. So I'd like to talk about that as well, where it's a journey together, but you shouldn't stop working on yourself.
No.
That person there isn't to fill your cup all the time. But also that person isn't meant to be that person for the rest of their life either. You've got to grow together.
Yeah.
So I do, like what's the percentage rate on marriages going to a divorce these days? Is it like 80%?
Yeah,
60?
it's huge.
Yeah.
There's a lot of breakups. I don't even know the statistics around it, but I know that every single person that I speak to is either gone through a pretty hectic breakup or going through a breakup.
Yeah.
It's like we're in that. I'm 38. How old are you?
42.
42. We're in that realm of like people are, you know, going through their first maybe divorce or second, you know, like and have their kids who are grown up and are going through the rise of themselves and like the reflection of themselves.
Yeah.
But I can't speak from a successful relationship because I'm not in one. You know what I mean? And I hear so many different things around showing up in a relationship. I've been single now for 3 years and have been really dedicated to myself. I think I have been toxic in relationships previously and you're unaware of it. You're doing the best that you can at the time, you know, and it's really easy to point the finger outwards and not reflect. But I suppose over the last 5 years, and I also trust that the relationships that I had with people, they weren't all bad. And even the ones that did feel bad at the time, you grow from them as well.
Yeah.
But I think asking that question of stepping back from a relationship is what I know now and what my expectations are of a relationship, or not expectations, or, you know, going into a relationship, I know they're hard. I think before I was, you know, it's supposed to be easy and this is what it should happen and, you know, this is how
stage.
Exactly. Where actually, if you're in the right relationship, it is like, you know, death by fire for each other. What I can see with my person who I'm going to meet is you choose each other. You end up choosing each other because you're going to stick around for that. And you're going to trigger each other. The best relationships, the beautiful thing is that I'm surrounded by a lot of really amazing relationships. My best friend, my sister, you know, a few of my other best friends. And again, they're not in a perfect relationship, but they've chosen each other and they're sticking through it. I think that's a part of it as well. And then, you know, you're going to trigger each other because it's like you trigger each other, you grow. You trigger each other, you grow. But if you're triggering each other to trigger the fuck out of each other, to push each other's buttons, that's wrong.
Yeah.
You're not.
I like that.
Yeah.
And I have to agree with you. First of all, I've got to agree with you. You've got to do the work yourself before you get into a relationship.
100%.
You know, I 5 years strong and I still got a shitload of work to do. But, you know, but particularly you've got to do that work to find yourself and know what you want.
Yeah.
But I like that as well. I think a relationship, man, like if you're strong enough and confident enough in yourself to go into a relationship, even from a male's point of view here, is that you should choose a woman that continues to make you stand the fuck up as a man, to be a strong man, you know, like not to be lazy. And so if your woman is triggering you, maybe have a reflected what yourself, if you're in a healthy, loving relationship, because she ain't doing it to just piss you off.
No.
It's because you fucking...
But also the reality is a lot of us have been in those. So you sometimes don't know the difference between somebody who's triggering you to be better and somebody who's triggering you from like toxicity. It's freaking hard. You know what I mean? And we rely on having communication with each other, and not everybody's great at communication. And you really have to know yourself when you're going into stuff. So it's kind of like relationships are challenging.
Yeah.
And I think that's the reality of it. But also choosing yourself and
I
knowing
think what we're agreeing there, though, is that like the idea is to shine light on each other's shadows a little bit.
Yeah.
In a loving way.
Yeah.
And a caring.
And support each other.
Yeah.
100%. Like where it's like you're not an asshole to each other and you're not like trying to outdo each other kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, there's always going to be a little that.
But also, if I'm in a relationship with someone, I want them to be the best.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I want them to show up as best they possibly can. With the expectation is not the right word. With the...
Well, you got to align with your values and principles, and
with the alignment. Yeah,
way,
as expectation seems like it has to be this way when we know that what you want to happen and sometimes what actually happens is very different.
Expectations is a hard word, because I actually reflected on I went to this. I got invited to be a facilitator at this 9D breathwork event. It was probably about maybe 6 or 8 months ago, and one of the facilitators that talked said this word of like we only struggle through our own expectations. And it just hit me. Oh. And then I went home, and then it's like, fuck, we're so right. It's only our expectations what we struggle to, because that you move that expectation and you're fine. Yeah. We're only struggling to our own expectations. Yeah. So maybe expectations isn't the right word. But you're right. If you're always looking over the fence or the next door neighbor or your other relationships around you and you're going, I want that all the time. Yeah. I guess they are your expectations that you'd probably suffer from.
Yeah. And I feel like we're all a product. I definitely feel like this, where I'm a product of, I had to acknowledge, I was having this conversation with a friend the other day, that it feels like I'm this person and I'm cool with it. Where the general message on social media, I had to check my algorithm maybe about a year and a half ago, where it was like women's empowerment. I'm an independent woman. I don't need no man. And the message that was going to the men were like, women are toxic and you need to, I don't know this, but it was based on the conversation. And I had to be like, hey, whoa. I can be an independent woman, but we do need each other. Men need women, women need men. And I think the world seems to have gone a little bit down the path of that we're all a little bit too in our masculine sometimes. I've definitely sat in my masculine for a long time, and I feel like that's where I've struggled to call in a relationship, because the reality is, though, I have to sit in my masculine, because to bring up myself, there's nobody providing for me. I do, I've got family who I lean on when I've got stuff going on. But the reality is there's feminine traits that I have to show up in providing for myself, I can't be in my flow and my femininity to get the bills paid and to do all that kind of stuff. So I've had to be in my masculine to...
Fuck, what a great topic, man. I think about this all the time, because I feel like the woman needs strong masculine men for them to be in their full feminine energy, and to be a full masculine man, we need that feminine energy back, But then, this world is really demanding on women to be empowered, and a good, healthy man will say, females need to be empowered. But can you not be an empowering woman like yourself in your true feminine energy?
Can you be both? Yes. Yeah, and so that's the journey I feel like I've been on. And it's only being surrounded by other people who acknowledge that as well. That's been my biggest lesson. So the job that I do, I go up into mining, where we do a mental health suicide prevention program. It's an 8-month program. I work alongside a big 6-foot-something Tongan fellow called Soa. And the biggest blessing that has a lot of things that have come from that is that going up into that industry, I used to absolutely shit myself. I used to speak to those crew because I was scared of them. I wanted to be liked by them and I wanted to be accepted by them. And to be accepted in that industry and to be accepted in a male-dominated, you tend to go into your full masculine where you're like, you want to fit in. So you start to talk like, like that and what actually is needed in that is the comfortable feminine like we're talking about. The blessing that I've had from working with Soa is that and from working with other people in it who maybe haven't acknowledged the privilege that they hold in being a man coming into that environment, that they might not have dealt with it well. And on the other side, he steps into a room, he has presence. As soon as he steps into the room, he's respected because he's earned that respect in the things that he's done before. And also, he is a 6-foot-something Tongan man who's a brown man that gets respect in Australia. Yep. Like even Indigenous men probably get less respect than, islanders and stuff like that, if I'm being real. Like we're being fucking real. You know what I mean? And not from everyone, 100%, but that is the common denominator of what I see.
What I'm trying to work out here, because I also think as you're saying this.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. Every time you walk into the room, the energy you bring, it's it's warming, and you do hold yourself right to give respect. But I feel like everyone's got their own judgment as well. But are we talking about when you first started, or how you are now?
When I first started, that was what it was, and so he was able to create that space for me. I acknowledge myself in the work that I did, definitely to be in that room, but I also acknowledge the men that have created that space as well. And I think that's really important because we can be a part of creating that, or you can pretend that it doesn't exist. You know what I mean? And so then that aside, I've got an amazing, female mentors in my life and friends of Matilda, who's one of my friends, who just embodies her feminine, and she is it. Like she shows up as that, and there's boundaries around it, and there's and my best friends and stuff like that.
What does that look like for those females that are listening to this? What is getting into your feminine? Because I know a lot of women that do talk about, man, I'm just in my masculine. I haven't, Right, so
for me, I can speak to what has looked like for me. It's definitely doing the work outside of showing up there and having my practices to show up in my softness. A part of it is not needing to be liked as well. A part of it is also, so how does it look being in my feminine and the things that I have to do?
Well, how does it look? Like how do you get there? Because like being the single mum, for instance, and I hear it from mainly single mums, to be honest.
Yeah.
And I hope this message does get out to them because it's finding them a little bit of hope as well, because I know I don't think there's any woman out there really that wants to be in their masculine.
No, we have to.
Yeah.
The reality is I don't think anybody necessarily wants to be in a hyper masculine. It's just you have to. It's hard to show up in the world as a single mother. And also I speak from a space of I'm not a single mother, so I don't know what it's like. You know what I mean? But I can only speak from the people that I know around it, is that there's masculine traits that you have to show up as. You've got to provide. You've got to keep on going even when you don't want to. You've got to, be the provider as well as be this soft, support system. You've got to be everything to everybody. And then also the kids probably end up fucking hating you because, there's things that you do wrong, not because you've necessarily done anything wrong, but because you're a parent.
Wow. True.
And if they don't feel comfortable enough to hate you at some points, then, what relationship, if they, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think there was parts when I really fucking hated Mum. There were really parts where she would always talk shit about Dad. And there were parts where, I wished the illest thoughts of her when she was in her darkest moments, where we did step aside, all of us stepped aside from stuff that was happening. But then acknowledging, it brings little tears, is that now being a woman in that space of where she was when she was struggling, I get it. And I don't even have kids. You know what I mean? So I think acknowledging when she was, because she was a single mum to an extent, and she was really pushing Dad out. She, there was stuff that was happening for her. But I suppose how I show up or how I try to show up in my feminine is there's feminine qualities. And, it's interesting going into mining because I'm like, why am I mining? Like, why? Why am I still there? Every part of me wants to not be in that space, but something bigger than me keeps on drawing me back. And I feel like there's a part of me that needs to be there for now. I feel like the part that I play is opening up the industry to softness, but speaking the language. You can't go up there and talk about 9D breath work to some of the crew right now, or talk about masculine and feminine to the crew that are up there at the moment. You got to speak about mental health existing and suicide being a problem.
Yeah.
And I suppose how it shows up for me and how I've been able to show up is we ask the question, there's 3,200 people die by suicide every year in Australia. That hasn't really shifted.
And that's what's recorded too.
And that's what's recorded, exactly. And there's so much stigma around it. 75% of that number is male. And we ask the question of why do you think that is? Like, why do you think that is?
Well, this is another statistic, and I think it was Sean from the Shaka project from Melbourne. I think it was him someone told me that so for every male that is suffering with mental health, there's another 4 females suffering with mental health. So more women suffer with mental health. Females just know how to deal with it.
Yeah.
And males just do something about it.
Yeah.
So we just go out and do something about it.
Do it.
Well, we're more prone to go and do something about it, meaning take our lives.
Yeah.
Females tend to deal with it in better ways. And that's credit to the women out there, where we should be listening to more about what you guys are doing, and that's more being vulnerable, talking about it, putting our hand up. There is no stigma around, feeling emotions or hardship, but that sort of makes sense, right?
Yeah, and that's the thing is like men don't necessarily. Being brought up in a world that has told you to toughen the fuck up, that has been, and not everyone. There's exceptions to the rule, and not every single guy is struggling with it. And actually, that 25% of that is female who've taken their life. So there's exceptions to the rule, but of that, 75% are male, and that's a huge. Of that number, that's huge. And the difference of how I feel like I showed up when I asked that question. Becky in the past, who was, power to women and women's empowerment, and that's what's most important, and it was like the pendulum was shifting and we've got to go over there, was when I heard back from men, I asked that question, why is that? And they would go, because we have it harder. We have more pressure on our shoulders. Life is tougher for us. And instead of going...
Is that the main sort of...
Yeah, and that we've done 200 presentations in the year. We've been up to nearly 40 sites. We've spoken to 15,000, predominantly men in those situations.
Why do they reckon they got it harder?
Well...
and I'm not saying they don't.
No, but the thing is, what I had to acknowledge is instead of going, well, do you know actually that women have this? Do you know actually that women feel the same? I started going, that sucks. I'm sorry that you feel that. And validating that it's not wrong or right when they answer that question. The fact that they feel comfortable enough to share that in that environment means that I've done a good enough job for them to feel safe to share that vulnerable information, because in the society, it's definitely a natural thing for me when I hear that to go, no, it's not. It's hard for everyone. But that's the stigma, is when people come to you with a struggle, what has been, people say is like, no, it's not. Toughen up. Like, it's not hard. But the reality is, if somebody's saying that, then that is their truth. Yeah. So for you, if you feel that, you feel that.
Yeah, well, on that note, in a lot of the men's workshops and stuff, like a big part of it is receiving love.
Yeah.
So it's one to say, we're struggling more, but are you receiving it?
Yeah.
Because if you're in a relationship, your girlfriend might be trying to give it to you. Your mum might be trying to give it. There's a lot of feminine energy.
Let me love you.
Yeah, and I know for the majority of my life, I was just like, get away from me. Don't touch me. I can't talk to you. I can't trust. Oh, we can only speak on our own journeys. But mine, from a young age, was just like abandonment. You just learn to survive, not let anyone in, losing close people, particularly after my mum passed away. It was like, fuck, I could never trust a woman. that was my unconscious thinking.
Mm-hmm. But that was true.
Yeah,
that was true
always,
for you.
Always sort of being shifted around.
Yeah.
As a kid as well, not really having any sort of stability.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and then I guess with just the male side of things, well, it is always just fucking harden up, man.
Yeah.
I guess from a male, so that was a big part of it. Where now I embrace a cuddle from another brother.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And but it's still hard even now. Like I mean, I've my mental struggles all the time, and even me being in this space and got hundreds of people I can reach out to, including yourself.
I'm like, call me.
Yeah.
Call me always.
Yeah, but like you can sit in there just thinking you're fucking alone.
Yeah. And
I don't know if that's just a male.
I feel that. I think it's mental health. I think it's mental health in general, and a lot of the time I know that. And again, we can only speak for our own experiences, but I know that when I'm in my darkest times, I tend to be like, all my friends are busy. I can't reach out to anybody. You're being ridiculous. Shut up. Get over it and stop.
Talk.
It's just a shit talk that's been conditioned into us that we have to show up in certain ways. And I suppose that was the thing. It was having those conversations and like acknowledging genuinely how people feel. Because on the other side of that, my family dynamic, and actually speaking about single mothers, mum was the masculine one. Dad was more in his flow. That's based on his upbringing and what he was. So for me, I had a perception of men and a perception of women. And then, mum, previous to that, was in a relationship where she was, like physically assaulted, and then went to dad, and then they broke up, and then went into another relationship where she was physically assaulted. And I watched that happen, and I was confused. I was like, how can you go from this man who's amazing and lovely and then go into, being physically assaulted and the domestic violence? It was confusing for me. And then I became a woman and went through my own experiences, and, having experienced again, and trigger warning, like always with any conversations, Lifeline 13 11 14 and 1-800-RESPECT, great number to call if anything's triggering you before I go. But, at having experienced sexual assault as a teenager, and when it happened, I fawned, like I completely just froze when things were happening. I didn't kick that person off. And afterwards, I was like, it's your own fault. You shouldn't have been there drinking. You shouldn't have done this. Who's going to believe you? Because a lot of the time back then, even now, the first point of call for people is to be like, well, what were you doing? What were you wearing? And all that kind of stuff. And while it's changing, and that's great, and it's a different experience for...
Almost like you brought it on yourself.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what I thought, when I was younger. And I know that that's a lot of people's experience, because I hadn't shared that for 20 years. And I used to run women's empowerment events. I did one, it was called Quit Your Bitching, which was around being kind to yourself and being kind to others. And at this event in 2020, for the first time, I shared my experience, and I shared that, I felt like it was my own fault. And there were 52 women in that room, and there were probably about 48 women who came up to me and told me that they'd had the same experience, if not the same, then something similar had happened to them. And shivers.
Yeah, I've felt that too. Yeah, so continue on.
It blew my mind, because I was like, I'm not alone. And I just felt lighter in sharing it, because I was like, shit, it wasn't only my experience. And then it was a stark realization of like, fuck, more people have had this experience than I knew. And then acknowledging that that has been a lot of people's experience, and that we weren't talking about it. And then there was, that's where the empowerment came from. And I would reflect on, how did I get to this, of where I didn't feel like I could say anything? And quite honestly, a lot of my experiences after experiencing that as a teenager were similar, where I wouldn't speak up for myself. I lost my voice. I started, I wouldn't wear anything revealing, and I just started drinking like, hardcore, and being in shitty situations, because I was like, I was worthless, I was dirty, I was broken. And I say this from an experience as a female. I'll touch on the fact that when I go up into mining and have this conversation and share about it, I feel like a lot of men don't feel seen and heard, because actually when it comes to being a child, it doesn't discriminate in gender. So going real heavy,
Wow.
around, child abuse and things like that. I think with the huge conversation around where women are being sexually assaulted, and it's predominantly women, when it comes to being a child, it doesn't discriminate.
No.
And it's actually a lot of men have had, that experience. And so as well validating that experience. And I think some men don't feel seen at the moment because we're speaking, which needs to happen.
Yeah.
Like both of those need to happen.
Fuck, I'm loving this conversation, bringing this up. And I appreciate you bringing all this up because it's keeping it fucking real.
Yeah.
Yeah. Fuck.
Yeah. It's hectic.
Yeah, for men as well. And I guess like between men, we wouldn't talk about that.
No. Because there's more shame.
Yeah.
Like there's even more shame because...
So what should a female do? What should a female teenager do in that sort of situation? Or even a young adult that is, 15, 16, gone, I'm assuming that was your age, or maybe even earlier, I don't know.
Yeah.
But is holding these burdens, and a male for that instance.
Yeah.
What are some of the avenues you can go down? Because I'd imagine I'm lucky enough. I've experienced a fucking lot of shit in my life. I've never experienced that, thankfully, because I believe that'd be one of the worst. But it's now that we're talking about it, like what? Because I can only imagine it'd be a lot of weight, Howard.
Totally, and so much shame.
Yeah,
and you talk about the anger that like that men or people in general are feeling. Imagine if something's happened in your past like that, and you're trying to show up in the world when you lost trust in. A lot of the time it's people. It's not like a hectic, violent experience on the street. It's people that it's family members, it's, neighbours and things like that. So you lose trust in people, and the support that you look for in adults and your parents and people that are supposed to be there to love you and bring you up, you lose that as a kid.
Yeah.
So that would be heartbreaking. So there's a lot of people carrying that stuff around. So when people, not to excuse anybody's behaviour whatsoever, but if you don't feel seen in experiences that you've had and you feel so ashamed, a lot of the time, in environments that we go up to, or whenever I speak or have a lot of people, and you would have this as well, where people come up and share with you something that they've never shared with anybody else. And you can see that person's coming to you thinking that this is going to be the worst thing I've ever heard. And I'm so fortunate to be able to hear that from somebody and allow that to drop off their shoulders. I've done a lot of work now where I don't carry that. It's not my burden to carry, and it's not my responsibility to make sure that you do something about it. I can put you in the right direction, and that's another story in itself. But for the first time, they've shared that with me, and they feel like it is the worst thing that I've ever heard in the world. And unfortunately, I've heard it so many times from, it doesn't matter who you are. And so asking the question around what can teenage girls do, what can teenage boys do, or however you identify, is that...
Or even young adults, or even
100%
those my age.
The work that needs to be done, if we could, in an ideal world, and I think it's happening, is as adults, we really need to educate ourselves in autonomy and having conversations. Like it can start with forcing your hug on a little kid, you know what I mean? But then also, as a parent, you want to be able to hug your kid. If they're saying, I don't want a hug, you're like, I just want to hug you, shut the fuck up.
It's a non-negotiable for me.
Yeah. But also it's like giving your kids that autonomy to know that they are allowed to say no.
Yeah.
And so with like uncles and aunties that come around, where that kids have an intuition. We're born with an intuition. We're born whole, right? And then we get all of this stuff put on top of us. A friend of mine, Kim Kent, talks about how we're born as this like glowing light bulb, this like glowing light. And then over the course of time, there's like covers and things that are painted on top of it, and the light slowly covers up and it becomes dark. And then so we go into the healing process of slowly taking away all of the things that have imprinted us or impacted us or, caused trauma to us, so that we can shine our light again.
Yeah.
And so it's about that. So there's no one answer, but as a teenage girl, what I wish for myself, and I'm grateful for the experiences I had, I wouldn't take any of it back. Yeah. I'm grateful because I wouldn't be here with you. I wouldn't have, met the people that I've met. So I would never.
And you hear the show the way.
Yeah, exactly.
And a good leader's been there and done it.
Totally. And exactly. And same. You know what I mean? Like, and as a teenager, it's like the autonomy of valuing myself in the space and being able to use my voice. What I wish for myself as a teenage girl is, not worrying about showing up in the world and however I show up. I'd always get called a weirdo and a freak, like all the time. And so you go through this, wanting to fit in. And when the reality is, and this is like a hectic conversation, but this is how I roll, like also fun too.
Yeah, I'm in.
But we're deep now,
is
that sexually, like our sexual desires and things like that and feeling things sexually happen quite young. And so because there's so much shame around feeling that, you're not allowed to talk about it. So you're having all these like things happening to your body as young as 8 years old, like 11 years old. Yeah. And so there's so much shame around it because of adults, because Bible, religion, human beings, all of the things, porn culture, rape culture, and things that have happened. Exactly. And so I find that because there's so much, I feel is if there wasn't so much shame around sexual desires and sexuality and who we were, I feel like the world would be a better place. However, we also can't show up in like a workplace just like, having massive stuff like that.
Friday, no clothes.
Yeah, exactly. Like if you're into that, then totally fine. But there's so much shame around things that happen. And so I think the work starts as an adult in, let's say we get to make a change in our kids' lives and also their kids' lives and leave that legacy behind. It's educating ourselves in what we're imprinting on our kids, because actually we're born innocent and we're born beautiful. And it's like dealing with your own shit and your own trauma, because I think for my upbringing, there was a lot of shame around it, that men only want one thing and that sex isn't beautiful and that it's not anything that you want to be involved in because, it's nasty, it's dirty and it's gross, when the opposite is true.
Yeah, well, like a little bit of, like I agree with you, but, like the way I was brought up and the way I've seen sex, it was horrible. I had to take a very long time to and go through a lot of different, do a lot of learnings, rewire my brain in terms of how I see women, and then, and sex. And what does it mean?
Yeah.
And I take no pride in saying this, but for a long period of my life, it was just fucking.
Yeah.
And that was it.
Well, porn culture. It's like you watch it and you go, nailing it.
Yeah.
Like, why doesn't it feel good though? Yeah. Like, why do I not feel fulfilled after that?
But even just the disrespect towards women as well. Like, I mean, I was very much a guy that just goes out and parties, and there's only one thing that I want a woman around for, and just and even the respect after sex and the relationships,
the aftercare and like the checking in on each other.
And it's a little bit like what we go back to before, and this comes up a lot on this podcast, and I say it all the time. I pretty much say it every podcast, and it's just like you don't know until you know.
Yeah,
and it's 100%. Not until you start doing the work. Yeah, and we even had Jeffrey Morgan on here, who's and he's done bank robberies, hold guns to people's heads and stole money. And,
he's so wholesome. You're
and
like,
why is it bank robbing's okay? But if you're
I know, but he's like, I can picture Jeff robbing a bank, being like, "Hey guys, sorry." Yeah. Like, fucking acknowledge you. I love you, but give me your money. Yeah. Like, that's the Jeff I know now. I just can't picture him actually.
I know. It's like you could be a glorified bank robber, eh? It's like, fuck yeah. I was even like, he talked about like the jutes of Haggadah sliding over the front bonnet of the car.
But also banks, like they're fucking robbing us. Let's be real. You know what
true.
I mean? Like, so long as you didn't hurt anyone, like, take their money.
Yeah.
Like that.
No. I agree.
Not correct. Don't rob banks.
No. Cut. No.
Cut. Shit. Like, SWAT team comes in.
Whoa. Fucking real. You're taking it.
Becky, Jesus Christ. We said taboo, but not that taboo.
Nah, I fully hear you. But I guess the point I was trying to make there is like, you don't know until you know. We're subject of the way, what we've seen, what we've heard. But, and then also going into, but we've got access to all these things that do make us are more aware of our actions. And the journey never stops as well.
Totally.
I'm sure I'm going to look back in 10 years' time again and go,
100%. If you're not growing. Like, I hope so. I'm forever growing. I'm forever celebrating the person that I was, because it was the person that I was got me to the place where I am now. And then, you keep on going. You don't want to get complacent. It would be nice to, be happy with where you're at. And I make sure I have times in the day for that. And some days I have it where I'm like, I've hit the jackpot. I've arrived. This is amazing. And I'm happy with it. Then also I think it's part of the human experience to know that what you're capable of, and you can do more and be more for yourself and other people, as long as you're not like breaking yourself in the process.
Yeah.
But you were talking about, I didn't hit on like consent and boundaries with something that I wish that I knew as a teenager.
Yep.
As, this is what I'm really passionate about. If I had boundaries to, when the things that were happening to me, to be able to say, hey, get the fuck off, or like, or not feel like I got really drunk and took myself away to a room and then woke up with somebody else in the room. So there was two parts of that. If the dude who it happened with, if I were to ask that person now, or in that current climate, that he sexually assaulted me, I believe he would probably say no, because he grew up in a world where he'd been watching porn culture, and that's what you do. Like, it's not only my experience that it's happened to. So I feel like we've let down the boys, we've let down the girls, but we're talking about it now. So it's consent, knowing yourself of like what you want to do and what you don't want to do. Not having shame around either one of those things of, I would like to explore that with you. And then on the other side, having somebody who you feel respects you enough to check in on you, and loving you enough and loving themselves enough to engage in something that's amazing instead of something that is pushed or forced. So, but reality is we have primal like desires. You know what I mean? It's acknowledging ourselves in that, around it's going to be a good experience if the other person also has a good experience.
Sure.
You know what I mean? But it's always been transactional. Like, I've definitely been there and done that before. And I think now it's like having that connection of like primal, of guttural, like, your gut, your heart, and your mind and soul. And
there is the primal, especially from a male's point of view. I mean, we just want to go out there and
but so do chicks. You know what I mean? I think that's the misconception as well.
I know that. Actually, I'm not going to talk about it. I can't talk about it. My daughter's here as well.
We'll have another one. We've gone real deep. So you've had a real. Are you okay? Like,
well, just
like,
with my daughter here though, like, I make sure that I do try to keep those communication lines open. Like we talk about, like, we don't go into depth about stuff, but there's this. It's a scary part for a dad as well, because I'm sure their daughter would be like, "Fuck, how do I approach my dad about it?" One, I think I can tell him, but fuck, what's he going to do?
Yeah.
It might be like I can talk to him about that.
Yeah.
But he's not the sort of guy that is going to just sit back and process it and walk off thinking that was it. Like, from a father's point of view, like, if you hear that shit.
Well, because you want to protect her.
Yeah.
And I think that's important as well. It's like an important role to play. If you've got both, like in an ideal, if you've got somebody that you can go to that isn't necessarily your dad, and then you can go and share with your dad, and, they're like, were you respected? Did it go well? How do you feel about this person? Are you okay? If not, I will go and, like, it's not acceptable to be violent, but to put someone in their place. Like, well, you can't fight violence with violence. You know what I mean? You got to practice what you preach, but it's okay to think it. You know what I mean? Like, it's totally okay to think it. But I think that's important what I've heard, and again, I seem to go down this road all the time, what I've heard from when people have taken advantage of somebody and sexually assaulted or abused, it's when they see a weak link within the family, and the person doesn't have somebody who's there to protect them. So it is the role to play as a parent to be protective of your children, and it's a hard thing to play, where you be protective enough so that they know that you're there for them no matter what happens, but also that they're not going to go through the ringer, and they're not going to be punished for something that somebody else did with them. And that, in essence, I think parenting is really challenging. So I don't have the answers for that. But that's, as a kid, I know there's work to do with men, women, and however you identify in between, and everybody's experience. I think it all comes down to, potentially the trauma that people have experienced, and not bringing that into, and trusting that they actually know for themselves, and that you've done a good enough job in the upbringing of them, and that you've, embodied what you want them to be enough that they will do the right thing. And there's going to be shit that happens, and there's going to be hard stuff that happens.
And the right time is now. I look back and I haven't been the perfect parent, and have a lot of guilt and shame over a lot of things. Being a father, But the beautiful thing is that I keep reminding myself is that every morning you get to put those 2 feet on the floor, and it's another opportunity to be that father that you want to be. And so it's never too late to have those discussions or to even talk vulnerably and openly to your kids. Regardless of it. And I'm mainly talking to men out there because I know like a lot of men do just hide it behind closed doors sometimes because it's hard being a father, man.
Yeah.
Especially in this modern day.
Yeah.
There's so many hats you got to wear as a father these days. And I'm not taking it away from the mums, but the mums, to me, in my eyes, just do it so naturally.
Well, you haven't been a mum, so you don't know.
Yeah.
You can only speak to your experience.
I just think you guys just do it so naturally. Wow.
Yeah.
Females.
It'd probably be a struggle for people. Again, I haven't. So I had an ectopic pregnancy where I was with a partner of mine, and I fell pregnant, had an ectopic pregnancy. So you know how you go through your whole life trying not to fall pregnant, and then you get to a certain point where you're like, I want to be pregnant now, I'm ready to go. And so I haven't been lucky enough to be a parent yet. I know that will come, and it's going to be there, and I hope it comes easy. But I also acknowledge that the friends that I've had who've gone through it, acknowledging Graydon at the moment. I reach out to all my friends who are going to be new parents of from what I hear, those first 6 to 8 weeks are fuckery. And you want to chuck the baby in the bin at the same time as you would chuck yourself in front of a bus for it. You know what I mean? Yeah. And so in preparation for myself being a parent, it's like working on myself, embodying who I want to be for my, future children and for my partner so that we can be, do the dance of parenthood kind of thing. So it's like forever that work.
Yeah. So on that note, and going back because we're talking about this before, because I feel sometimes in relationships, males are becoming more feminine and females are becoming more masculine. So, but then I'm a true believer, and I'm all for women's empowerment and rights, but I'm a little bit old school in the way as well that men should be providers because I feel like that's like their natural instincts when how we're brought up. Like we just like to feel like we're providing. It doesn't mean that they've got to provide more than the woman in their relationship, but and I do think females are naturally more nurturers. Like when I was just talking about being mums, I just think they're just naturally better at being probably, like that side of things. Now in the modern society that we live in, things are changing, and but where is the balance from your perspective?
Oh, that's it's a big question because in an ideal world, I agree, and also some women really excel living in that, and some men actually like to fall back. It's about acknowledging what you want from your relationship, and
true, good answer.
I think,
and being honest.
Yeah, the beauty of women's empowerment and where feminism has gone and where it's been misconstrued is feminism has been perceived as this big fuck men, and we don't need men, and whereas actually we have to acknowledge that the world was a man's world. It has been for such a long time. The reality also is that the men in the world right now are paying for all of the ways that their forefathers have lived, and actually a lot of the benefits that men used to have, you don't have all of them anymore. And so for men in this day and age, I find it's confusing to talk about women's empowerment, that there needs to be a balance of 50-50 in the workplace, that there has to be, we have to support women to come up, and that we're not supporting men. That doesn't come from nothing. It comes from because, expectations, but also men, how you go for a job in mining, for example, or in any workplace, women potentially, not every workplace is exception to the rule, may get the job over you because they need to hit a quota. Not ideal, but we need to be there. because for centuries, men got the job because they were men.
Yeah.
And it's unfortunate because it's the men and the young men at the moment who are paying for all of the things that happened in the past. And I can imagine it would suck, like where it's like you don't get any benefit from what's happened in the past. So I feel for men at the moment.
Yeah, that's actually a really good answer because you're right, because I feel like the men of our generation now are like, if like in the workplace, it'd just be like, I'd employ a woman. But I'd seriously pick, with my old company, I had up to 40 staff at one point, and I'd actually choose a woman over a female. I mean, over a male a lot of the time because they were just better managed. They showed up. They took the job seriously, But you are right, I guess, eh? Especially, the mining would be a little bit different too.
It is, and I think it's also important to acknowledge there are exceptions to rules. So to say, like, our physiology is different. So quite often I hear in the environment is that men can do a job better because they can lift heavier things. It is mostly true, which is valid. Yeah. And also there are females who can lift that much and there are men who can't lift that much. You know what I mean? But it is physiology. There's things that we can do better because of, the qualities that we hold as feminine, and there's things that you guys can do better. I think what happens sometimes when it comes to, trying to go for gender equality and equity, or gender equality more so than equity, is that especially in leadership, sometimes there'll be women who will go into leadership, but they'll be leading in a masculine way. So they'll be trying to lead like their male counterparts. I don't think we need more masculine leadership, although you need those qualities to be a leader. What is needed is the feminine, or like the softness, the supporting, the things that we do hold. I don't run a company. I don't have a massive multi-billion-dollar, company that needs to bring in revenue all the time. So that's easy for me to say, from this chair having this conversation.
Don't you just look at, as we get older, like you just look at everything with balance?
Yeah, balance. And also not like division. I find that's also division. And like it's interesting because we're having this conversation, but I think it's important to acknowledge like how we got here kind of thing, and that actually we all need each other, and you need masculine and feminine within, every man needs masculine and feminine, every woman needs masculine and feminine. So it's I don't think there's one answer, but my brain goes 10 to a dozen all the time. So always...
if I was to sum it up with an answer of everything that we've said, is just to acknowledge another person's point of view.
Yeah.
We should be listening more to the woman. The woman should be listening more to the man a little bit, and coming to those
not
places.
Coming from ego.
Yeah, from ego as well, and defense. What's the word? Like being defensive of someone's message back to you. Communication's a huge thing, isn't it?
Oh, poscoms. Yeah, communication huge.
Yeah.
When I first started, acknowledging the work that I needed to do with myself, it was communication. And that one of the first things I did working with somebody was, where was all the undone communication in my life? Where were the conversations that I hadn't had? Where was I not communicating properly, and why wasn't I communicating properly? Was I in touch with what I wanted, and was I communicating that like correctly? And then also being able to, I've had a mentor in the past as well, as picking up the communication that isn't verbal and the communication in the room that isn't physical or verbal, but it's like a feeling. You know what I mean? Like there's so many ways and different ways to communicate, and we're so stimulated in the world that you don't get to see it or hear it or feel any of it. All of us are just so like
so fast.
Yeah. Moving so fast and stuff.
Yeah, I'm even thinking about like my next question to you now as well, because you're so inspiring to, I mean, I've known you for a while now, and I know a lot of what you do. What's like, what does Becky do in terms of, well, one thing I do ask a lot of my guests is, what's your morning routine look like? But if there's any women out there that are listening to this, or even men that are inspired by you, so what is sort of some of the things, so your morning routine, I want to know that, if you have one. Or is it just wake up and fucking just get out of bed?
Survive.
Crawl out of bed. Coffee. Chuck your high vis on.
Yeah.
And some of those things that sort of keep you grounded, focused, and towards your purpose, and maybe sharing on your what is your overlining, what's the word, your purpose?
Yeah.
What is your message?
I feel like there's been so many. I often feel as though a lot of us, or speaking to myself, is to embody. It's like to go back to what we were born as. You know what I mean? Go back to without, like, stripping back all of the shit that has ever happened, how we feel about things in the world, and going back to that, like, wholesomeness that we were born as kids. I suppose my vision, my mission, and my purpose is to create safety enough for people to be able to strip back all of those layers and to not feel alone. I feel like my purpose within the mining industry, like I said at the beginning, is to bring in that validation and feminine and the groundedness of what's missing in that industry.
Is it that industry alone, or is that just what you've?
It's just what I've been in.
Yeah.
I think there's, it's in defense. It's in everything,
Yeah.
like I can speak to it because I went into it. And it's so interesting that that's such a big part of my identity, because I've only been in mining for 7 years and it just keeps me in there. Like, it's not even the golden handcuffs or anything. I just feel really drawn to. It's so rewarding, I think, knowing that, and it comes back to my morning practices and the things that I have to do to be a facilitator. I used to facilitate from a fair bit of ego, where I was like, what can I say to impress these people? And, I really want to I want to get them, like, in the feels kind of thing. Whereas now I think I'm far more connected to myself and, something bigger than myself, where I ask the question of, I trust myself, I trust the right words will come and the right people will hear them, and just asking, like, how can I best serve these people in front of me? Give me what I need that these people need to hear. And whether that's being vulnerable and sharing a story that I've experienced or something that I've experienced, or validating and hearing what somebody has to say. So with my morning practices or my practices, I've had to get real strict on it and have dedication and devotion to myself over the last, it's even changed in the last, like, 6 months, because you can't show up in those environments or have a fast-paced kind of life unless you're showing up for yourself. So moving each day, I have to make sure that I'm moving each day, because for my mental health, like, my brain works so fast. I have to move each day. And so I take resistance bands up to site, and I'm literally on site every week at a different site. Don't know what it looks like, which room I'm going to be in, where the gym is, if you can go for a run outside. So it's like setting myself up to win, so that I can move my body somehow, or I'll do body weights in the donga.
What
kind
time are
of
you
thing.
getting up? Well,
So
I guess on mine sites would be quite early.
but it's all over the place. So you usually have to be there at 5 or 4:45, so we can set up. So we're getting up at, like, 3:45, 4 o'clock. So when I don't have time for a morning routine, something that I've been doing, and through a mentor and, like, one of my besties, Luca, he's creative. I wanted to get back to my creation and, like, listen to my own thoughts. I think I was so consumed by everything else. There was so much reading books, listening to podcasts, the news, the watching social media, having other conversations with people. I think sometimes you lose sight, or I definitely lose sight, from how I actually feel about things, or my actual thought process or opinion. Like, you're not allowed to have a fucking opinion anymore. But you can. It's okay.
Yeah.
It's just part of being a human. So going back to something that I started doing, and I can't remember the book, but he'd recommended a book, but he'd said writing in the morning before you do anything, just journaling things that come. And for those people who are, like, connected to something higher, that's when a lot of the time they say around 3 a.m. or 2 a.m., 3 a.m.
Frequency, vibration with frequency as well.
Yeah, something like that. But I find that's when, if I wake up before my alarm, so it's like going to bed at a reasonable time so that I can wake up before my alarm, or not hate wanting to get up, writing things out and whatever comes, and, like, that's when ideas will come for me. But then it's like my brain has been cleared, because otherwise it's like, and then you don't know which way's up and which way's down. Like, I don't know if you have that.
Oh, man. I'll talk about my morning routine. But
Yeah, I'd love to hear.
Yeah.
And also it's taking from other people's as well. And then also, so I'll do a meditation. When I'm up on site, I'll do a protection meditation. And if I don't have time or I haven't given myself enough time, I'll do that while I'm in the shower, like pop my ears in. And usually I'm not it's going into depths, but not wetting my hair or anything. So I can obviously listen to something. Protection meditation, I make sure I've eaten the same thing for the last freaking 2 years. It's like an overnight oats chia seed with banana and stuff like that. So fueling myself properly so that I'm getting energy in. And then also, on my time off, I might only get, because I've been up on site every week with definitely the weekend off. So 2 days to recover and then get back up onto site. I'll go and have a massage, or I'll go to a breath work, or I'll go to a cacao, or I'll connect with my community around me. Because although sometimes when I was depressed, so, about a year ago in 50 grand's worth of debt, it looked like everything was fine on socials because it wasn't because I didn't want to post. It's just I didn't know how. I didn't know where I was at. But celebrating where I am now compared to where I was a year ago, moved in with Dad 3 years ago, tried to start a company, tried to start a podcast, you would know, foot the bill for the podcast because I was so passionate about having the conversation with people that I was like, we need to have this, and ended up in that 50 grand's worth of debt. My car blew up. I went into business with somebody and just kept on spending money on the business and stuff like that, and just felt like shit about myself and was just depressed because I was like, you're sinking. That the waves are just crashing behind you and crashing, and it's just like, you know how you feel that? I felt that every day. I'd wake up in panic attacks. And when I started in one of the roles, I started working with somebody I think who needed to also do a bit of work, and I wonder if we triggered each other, but there was a lot of things that happened in the start of that process. And it was the last time I experienced not speaking up for myself, being disrespected, losing faith in someone, and I don't need to experience it anymore. But being on the other side of that happened, it's like it needed to happen.
Is that what? It's sort of like that hitting rock bottom.
I hit rock bottom. Yeah. I really felt. There's been many times in life where I've felt that, but that particular time I was like having panic attacks all the time. And I'd never really had panic attacks. I'd have panic attacks up on site in my room. And the thing that I did when I was going into those panic attacks is I knew my support network. I felt alone. I felt like, I can't call them or burden them. But I made sure I was like, and this is what I had to do. And it sounds like, but I was like, tell me that you love me. Tell me how good I am. Remind me of all the things that I've achieved. Remind me that it's worth it, and remind me that it is going to be okay. And I'm so lucky that my support network is so solid that they'll be like, you're fucking amazing and you've done this thing and I've got your back. And actually, if you want to give it all up, we still love you. You don't have to go out and do all of that thing, and just reminding yourself that it's a choice that you're making to be doing those things and being in the heart and being in the trenches.
How important is that, And, one thing I'm not short of with some of the boys and women I've got around in my life is that there's very rarely a day where or especially with Graydon, I'll call him out. But I would just this morning, 5:30 in the morning, fuck, I love you, brother.
Yeah.
I wake up to that.
So good.
And we go back and forth like that just between the two of us all the time. And it's super important. And I think, that's that where we need to be as human beings too, is always go out of your way to fucking remind those around you how much you love them, how much you mean to you, how well you see them, that you see them shining. Or I think it's also okay, I don't know what you think of this, but it's also okay to acknowledge if you see one of your mates down, hey man, I see you're down.
Yeah.
I see you struggling, but I still see you fighting.
Yeah.
And you've still got the fight in you, brother. So just keep going. Call out if you need
100%. And that's amazing. And I think sometimes we forget because you're surrounded by people who do that, but predominantly actually in the world, that's not the case.
Well, it's a huge, I just read something come through the other day. It's like 95% of males don't have anyone like that.
No. And that's the work that you guys are doing. So that's why I love everything that you guys are doing, and I want to be a part of it as much as I possibly can, because when I'm speaking to, like going off and speaking in these environments, I can honestly trust that I'll go, you've got to get involved with what these guys are doing, because people aren't necessarily ready straight away to go and have a journey and, speak about their feelings and like let it all out. Sometimes what they need is a breath work, or just to meet someone in the boxing ring who's doing physical activity, who's willing to say, hey man, awesome to meet you, and not have ego involved.
Yeah.
And so, like, everything that you guys are doing, you're being it, you're embodying it, and I appreciate that. And I acknowledge the work that you've done to be that for each other.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And like,
I wouldn't be, I honestly couldn't be here today if I didn't have that. Those people in my corner.
Yeah.
With the starting line. And on that note, if anyone is looking for any sort of resources out there to start a journey that might have been triggered from any of the stuff we're talking about, on the start, only because I'm working on the Starting Line website at the moment, but if you go to the Starting Line website, we are uploading everyone's sort of details on there that who are podcast, or they're, like the boxing gyms or the breathworks.
Yeah.
Even got, if you're looking to do plant-based medicine, because I'll quite openly start talking about that sort of stuff. I think it's huge. It needs to be spoke about more.
Yeah.
In terms of from a healing point of view.
Yeah.
And the other thing is, you got to create it.
Yeah.
Like this, I wasn't just lucky enough to.
No, you didn't stumble into it.
You didn't stumble into it. You need to put your head up.
And acknowledging yourself in that.
Yeah.
The question that we've been asking, like we finished up a program, we asked the question of what is the challenge that you've overcome and what's something you're proud of. And most of the people in that room have never sat and gone, I've overcome a challenge. And then what is it that I'm proud of? Because, bragging or like, oh, get over yourself, or tall poppy syndrome, especially in Perth, in WA and in Australia, tall poppy syndrome is massive, where you can't celebrate yourself. In other countries, like they do it. I mean, they do other things that aren't great either, but we don't celebrate ourselves or acknowledge it.
Surround yourself with people
who big you up,
fucking want to hear you celebrate, like that will toot your horn for you.
And see you succeed.
Yeah, man. Make it normal, man, to celebrate. But it is hard. I know as a male, like I have to remind myself all the time to just actually stop, breathe, and fucking acknowledge what you're doing. Yeah.
I will. Like anybody who needs to be acknowledged, like come at me. I will acknowledge you because it is so important. And like going back to the book, acknowledging it was really interesting. So we had the launch last night, and it's interesting with something like the book of feeling like an imposter. You know what I mean? Like I said it last night around feeling, like who am I to be a part of a book or to be an author? Even when I'm doing speaking, I'm like, a lot of the time when I first started was who wants to hear what I have to say? Like get the fuck over yourself and shut up. You know what I mean? And the reality is some people actually genuinely do think that, and they're like, oh, here we go again. They're not your people. And people who truly need to hear what you have to say because you're doing the work, or maybe you're triggering someone. I said this on socials around little Becky, who struggled in school, who struggled to read. Like I could read, but it was like I'd be reading a book and I'd be like, squirrel. You know what I mean? Like totally distracted.
Yeah.
Reading wasn't my strong point. I did, in high school, I was told by the guidance counselor, like, look, Becky, we don't think you should do TEE because it looks bad on them, but they don't say that. They're like, you shouldn't do TEE. It's not your strength. Maybe you should think about doing a vocational subject or something. And I was like, you know what? Fuck you.
Yeah.
Had so much hormones going on. Like I was definitely a trouble kid, but I was nice. I won like the Positive Image Award. They were like, she's trying, but she's a bit like, not
slow.
the greatest, a bit slow. So I struggled. I never would have. If you had told Becky, little Becky, teenage Becky, with all the stuff that was going on at home, all the stuff that was going on in my mind and how I was showing up in the world, that I was a part of a book, and speaking when I would absolutely shit myself when, if it was, in the classroom where it was your turn to read, or they're like, read something off the board, and you're like, your mouth goes dry, your eyes are wide, and you're like, no, don't pick me. If you had told that girl that I'd be doing what I'm doing now, I would have laughed in your face. I would have gone, shut the fuck up. I'm not going to be seen. I want to be pushed to the, like as unseen as possible. I don't want any part of it. And so I acknowledge myself for that. And I'm surrounded by people who acknowledge me in that on the days where I feel like an imposter, and on days where I'm like, who do I think I am? Whenever I speak, I always doubt myself, like.
I can fully resonate with that. Like, I mean, even now, like Steve at Breathwork, when I'm facilitating with him, he purposely gets me to talk, because if I get any opportunity to go, nah, man, even some of the events that I put on, I'm like, I don't want any acknowledgement. I don't want to talk. I'm just happy to just have this event on and everyone to enjoy it. But I could never read or write either. Even before I went into business, I couldn't string a sentence together with spelling in emails. And this talk that I'm doing at the gala is I'm fucking struggling with it, because it's a self-worth thing. But I also just wanted to go into it. Sometimes we're worried about what other people think, but it's never the case. I think I'm my own worst enemy.
Totally.
Because I think I'll still, regardless of what I do up on that stage, even if I stumbled through it, I'm sure it's
you're showing up.
Yeah, you're showing up.
While everybody else is there shitting themselves, being like, don't ask me any questions because I don't want to do it. And like,
I can remember with this podcast, even with this podcast, I still haven't watched my first 8 episodes because I couldn't even stand to hear myself.
Yeah, you're like, ugh, and like I said this and I shouldn't have said that, and you worry.
Yeah.
But it's like asking that question of, if you spoke to me the way that you speak to yourself, I'd be like, fuck, Dave's an asshole. I don't want anything to do with him. If I spoke to you the way that sometimes goes on in my brain, you'd be like, God, Becky's a dick.
Yeah.
But also, and being surrounded by people enough to know that goes on. It's a part of the human experience. I don't know if it'll ever go away.
From a female's point of view, like, from a male's point of view, a lot of our stresses are money, providing, natural things for males. And I've noticed with females, it's about presence and how they look and their figures, and and that's probably something that maybe males do think about. I don't so much, but
I think more so now men tend to a little bit more, whereas it used to be only women.
Self-image, what people are going to think.
Yeah.
And what are some good things to sort of overcome these voices? Because everyone has them.
Yeah.
And you're talking before just being in your own thoughts, having no distractions. We talk about that a lot on this podcast. So, just being alone, fucking put the phone away, turn off the TV, sit in that silence and sit there and put a timer on. So I'm doing this for an hour.
Yeah.
I know that works for me. Meditation obviously works a lot. Morning routines help a lot with that sort of self-talk, negative self-talk. Journaling. Is there anything else? What do you...
It's really interesting that you bring up the stresses of men and women and how they're different, and acknowledging, I think for a long time in the world, it wasn't acknowledged that we were different. It was like this big push that we're all the same, like in the push towards equality and equity.
Is it okay to say we're different?
Yeah.
Yeah, because I think we are.
We are.
Yeah.
We absolutely are. Yeah. Like, we have different physiology. Like, we react different to things. The way that we think is completely different. It would be remiss of us not to say, but yeah, we're all human beings. But it's interesting. I had to acknowledge a part of this in myself when you were talking about the providing money for yourself, and, being the provider and finances and stuff like that.
The hunter and gatherer.
The hunter and the gatherer. Is that when I was younger, my first boyfriend that I had, his dad owned a lot of the property and a lot of the businesses in the town that he grew up in. His mum and dad separated, and his perception was that his mum took it all from him. His mum brought up 3 children in the house and didn't have, finances coming in. And so perception for a lot of kids when parents break up is that mum fucking took it all and dad was working hard, when the reality is that the woman has birthed children and potentially brought them up. Not the case all the time. There are toxic, people in it. So there's exceptions to that, and more so, there's a lot of that going on. But his perception was, he said to me when we were in this relationship, we were in it for 4 years, is like, before we get married, we're going to be in a prenup. I was 18 to 22. I was. Before we get married, we're going to be in a prenup.
How old was he? 55.
I know, like 100.
Yeah.
Jesus Christ. So keeping in mind, love him, bless his soul. We were going through a journey, and it had to be.
At least he had the balls to say.
Yeah, bless his soul. But I was like, bruh, you don't have any money. Like, what the fuck? He was an apprentice. I was like working. I was like, what the fuck are you talking about? But it was reflection only in this last kind of 10 years to acknowledge that really dictated how I showed up in the world, because I thought that I had to come into a relationship whole financially, having provided for myself, on overdrive, trying to get a house, create myself, have my body ready for babies, to be able to show up as the best mother, to be able to show up as like a good partner. And I had to have everything to bring, because no guy wants to come into a relationship where the woman's broken. I had the perception that if I wanted to be, provided for, then I was a gold digger. And so I was overheated in overdrive, trying to create this life for myself, have been for the last 25 years. How old am I? Yeah. Is that for the last 25 years, is that what I have to bring to a relationship is that, when actually it's wired in a lot of men, again, there's exception to it, but there's wired in a lot of men that they want to provide that safety. And so.
And when I say that, I mean I think just being driven, but working on yourself. It doesn't necessarily mean have huge amount of savings in the account, but that you'll show up.
Yeah. Or be driven, want bigger and better for yourself. Yeah. And also that you're both going to show up. And in a relationship for somebody, being open-minded, being willing to, apologize when there's things that you need to work on, both of you, and also respect for each other. And you might meet somebody who has $0 in their bank account, but they have a desire to create something bigger. They might not have a house. They might not even have a car. They might have spent all of their money on something that they're passionate about, but seeing that passion in them, that they want to create something bigger, and that when you do get together, you can grow in that together. You don't need each other, but you can actually excel with each other in each other's lives.
For sure.
It takes a lot to acknowledge that, because that's where I was at. I had nothing. Again, I'd always end up back in that place. But you also asked the question of, how females show up and how it's perception around their body is, I'm proud to be able to say I've always had really good body image. I think it had a lot to do with being around a lot of nudity. It didn't matter what you looked like, what race you were, what gender you were. There was no sexuality, there was nudity, and everybody accepted each other. So, there's merit in that. I don't know how you make that happen, but so I've always loved my body, and I know that that's an exception to the rule. When I did the events, Quit Your Bitching, it was talking about diet culture and body image, and I knew that actually, a lot of women hate themselves, their body, have never looked at themselves in the mirror naked. We're sold a lie of what we're supposed to look like, of that you're not supposed to have any wrinkles or any grey hair, that you're supposed to have perky boobs and a perky butt and a skinny tummy. Before it used to be a Kate Moss body, which was, her saying was nothing tastes as good as skinny feels. So that was the era that I grew up in. Acknowledging the generation now, because they've done a huge favor for us. The saying that I grew up with was beauty is pain. You'd wear heels out. You'd have fucking sore feet. Now the teenagers are like, fuck that. I'm going to be comfortable when I go out. I'm wearing flats. I'm going to show up how I want. They did that. Yeah. We didn't. We were paved the way for them, but actually the teenagers and 20s of now actually have a better perception of their body. But the reality of speaking about body image and relationships is women house children. Your body changes over that. A lot of breakups that happen when either the woman is pregnant, has given birth or giving birth, or it's that first year or two after the pregnancy, and then you might fall pregnant again, you've got a toddler, where there seems to be a lack of acknowledgement that you got to hang around in the hard times. The body is going to change.
Providing.
Yeah, that's what you do.
Yeah.
But I also acknowledge everybody in that the conversation hasn't really been had, and men and women haven't necessarily been, we're not in a village anymore with each other.
Sorry.
She need to go.
Yeah.
Yeah. We can chat for hours.
Yeah.
She's like, shut the fuck up. But we could talk about it for days. We'll do another one.
Well, we'll definitely do another one.
Yeah. This has been a pleasure. Like, I could talk about all of this stuff all the time.
It needs to be spoke about too. Yeah. Maybe we do. We'll do a few segments, I reckon.
Yeah.
We'll try and make it regular.
I would. I would love that. Yeah. I would really love to do that.
Well, we'll talk about that after this, because I'm keen. I feel like there's a lot of topics we can talk about and go in depth on. We've sort of skimmed across everything at the moment. But we'll end it with this. I truly appreciate what you're doing in the community, Becky. It's unreal for the women mainly, but also like I say, even for the men, like, you know, keeping us real as well. I appreciate you being a part of the gala, part of the community, the Starting Line community, the podcast now, and appreciate you being on here today.
Thank you for having me. It's like highly anticipated. I'm really excited to be here.
We've finally done it.
I finally did it. Like, I acknowledge you for creating the space, all the fuckery that you've been through that have gotten you to this point where you're sharing this and creating this space for other people, and all the work that you do as well. So I receive that as well, and giving also giving it right back at you. It too. No, you hang up. You hang up.
We'll still be here tonight.
Yeah.
Awesome, Becky.
Thank you.
Thank you.